I'm Kelly Langston, and I believe that right now God is preparing the place for Christian authors to get their works out into the world. It is a place that really needs encouraging books. There are many, many places that teach other authors to self publish and become indie authors. But I really want to reach out to those who are called to write inspiring, uplifting books. There are so many other kinds of books out there. All you have to do is take a walk down the young adult section of the bookstore, and you can see all the competing messages out there. If that's what you do, not saying that that's your thing, but that's not really who I'm speaking to. I want to connect with Christian authors and motivational authors, authors that have encouraging messages out there, whether it's a story or it's a short story or a memoir, something that is written to inspire, to lift up and glorify God. Um, and just to encourage others. I think there's so many things out there. There's so much that we're dealing with. There's negativity everywhere. There's depression. There's darkness. All of those things. But we're called to be a light. And God has given people specific gifts to lift up that light to the world. And if that's you, and if your gift is writing, that's why I am reaching out to you right now. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am, and I was exactly in your shoes if you have not been published yet. Um, so let me tell you, I'll go back and show you. About in 2000, oh gosh, my son was diagnosed with autism in 2003. And at the time, I just prayed to God that if you would um, come alongside of us and encourage us and help show us how to walk this walk with autism, and not let it beat us down, but to do it victoriously, to learn to be the mother that my son needed. That was so important to me. That if God would come alongside us in that story, in our journey at the time, then I would share it. I would share the story, and I would help other people walking through that same path. I would help them by what God would teach me, and God honored that prayer. And so he came alongside of our family at a time when we didn't know what we were doing. We were facing this giant of autism. We didn't know how. We didn't even know much about autism. This was back in 2003. But he really came alongside of us. He provided everything that we needed, even when the recession hit and we had so little in terms of financial assistance. I mean, we were at one point we could barely buy our groceries, let alone provide therapies for my son. But God came alongside of us and walked with us. I used to think of it as walking with Alec. That's my son, and he came alongside of us. And my son is now doing quite well in college. He's just a delight. He brings so much joy and happiness to us every single day, and I'm so blessed to be his mom. But anyway, there came a time when God was like, "Okay, you remember that promise that you said that you would help others by sharing a message of hope with other parents of special needs kids." And so He called me to write a book. Well, I argued back with him because I do that sometimes. I have to be honest. I said, God, I don't have a platform. Nobody knows who I am. No publisher is going to give me a contract. I don't have time. We don't have, I mean, just most of it came out of doubting myself and worse, doubting God. But God, when God calls you to do something, He creates a space and a place and the method. He gives you everything you need to get that work done. So I went to a She Speaks conference by a great group of women called Proverbs 31. You might have heard of them. If not, look them up. They're awesome. And they help teach Christian authors and speakers to get their messages out. So I went there and pitched this proposal to write a faith-based book on walking in the midst of autism with my family. And you put together this proposal. You have to research the market. You don't take it lightly. I mean, you have for a nonfiction book, I pretty much had the manuscript. I mean, just everything, the outline all there. Um, it's a very thorough process that you do when you're going to pitch your book to a publisher. Did all that, pitched it to two publishers, and waited. And I really felt like God had called me to do this, even though I pushed back because I just didn't think that I was facing something that was an impossible task, basically, to have a publisher pick my book up. But 6 months later, I got an email from one of them, and the answer was, "Hey, we think this is a great idea, but no, we're not interested in this right now, but best of luck." So I remember that day, I sat down on the floor and just was praying, God, I really thought I heard you, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm not called to write this book after all. Within that next half hour, I got an email from the other publisher, and the answer was yes, we're going to pick up your book. And so that started the journey to traditionally published Autism's Hidden Blessings. It was published in 2009, about 10 years ago. And I learned so much during that process. I learned how um, to put together all of the chapters and to make it flow and to speak to the audience that I'm trying to reach with this message, and the process of publishing, creating the cover. I got to provide input with that. Just everything was just this the marketing. I think one thing that a lot of writers do not understand is that when you are published traditionally, you still have to market your book. I think a lot of people think, well, I don't want to touch that, so I'd rather have it traditionally published because I hate marketing my own works and I would never want to do that. Believe me, it is. I get that feeling. Sometimes it's very hard to market your own work if you're not that kind of person, and I get it because I understand what that's like. I kind of feel that way too, but you still have to, even with traditionally published books. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but as I wrote this story, it took a year to write it. Um, it's basically a book of God's promises for children with special needs. But as I wrote it, I couldn't help thinking about all of the women who had, well, it was a women's conference, but how many people across the nation, across the world, go to these conferences, these Christian writers conferences, and they put their heart and soul into pitching this book that's just burning inside of them, and they don't have the platform, or they don't have basically the platform is a big thing, but the publishers are afraid to pick those books up because the publishers have to sustain themselves too. They have employees, they have overhead, they have to pick books that can help continue the work that they are doing. But there are so many writers that have these wonderful stories that they don't have these platforms and they can't get in the door. And I couldn't help but thinking about all of the people who got the answer of, hey, we can't pick this up right now. What about them? And that kind of like burned in my mind for a few years. Um, Back in 2015, I started writing another book, and it was more of a prayer journal and a devotional about praying to God and committing 40 days to pray for Him in a time of a stressful time, a perilous time. And so, with that book, I decided to do something different, and I felt that it was time to learn to publish it myself. So that was kind of like the key that to unlock was knocking on a door to get a second book published. I had pitched it to a few Christian publishing houses, but the answer was no. So I thought, well, why don't I learn to do this myself and open up my door? I was knocking on somebody's door, but why don't I open the door and learn how to publish? So I learned the steps to self-publishing, and so that is when I published. Let me get this back up here for you for a second. Well, actually, I just deleted it. Sorry about that. That was when I published 40 prayers for perilous times, and I had it up there for a second. Sorry, it's gone now. I can't seem to. No, let me check one more time. Maybe it's still up here. No, sorry about that. But I published 40 prayers for perilous times. I did the entire work myself. I learn the formatting process, the editing process, how to self edit your book, and how to reach out and get people to review your book. The cover design I did, and the copyright issues. That is very important. You want to make sure that you are properly crediting and using copyright, and you don't, in other words, you don't steal anybody's work or image. You have to do everything legally, and all those things are things I had to learn. After that, I can put some other things up. I put up When God Gives a Dream, which is available also. And one more thing that I just recently published was Last Request. That is more in a narrative faction. A narrative, Last Request, let me get that right, is more of a narrative work. It's actually a true story based on an incredible story that my father had when God called him to step out and speak to a dying man in the hospital. And he thought that he was on the wrong track. He thought that all this thing that he did for God was, he bombed out basically. But God stepped in and showed him that no, he had been right all along, and it's an amazing story that gives you goosebumps. And all of my friends, when I tell that story to them, they and it's not just me. It is authors. I'm hearing stories from all over the world. People are reaching out to me that they have these God inspired stories. And I think that it's time for Christian writers to step up and learn the steps to self publishing their books so that they can get those stories out to people who really need to hear them. They need to be the light that this world really needs right now. So, my question is, are you a Christian writer, and have you been waiting and waiting and waiting for someone to publish your book? God does things in his own way. If he gives you a dream to be a writer, if he gives you a calling to be a writer, he is going to make that happen. And you go to him in prayer and you ask that to give you a clear vision for what he wants you to do. And that's something that sets a Christian writer apart from another writer, is that we write to please God. So we call him into the process. And even more than that, it's more like you jump into his story rather than asking him to jump into your story. You're saying, Lord, where are you moving right now? I want to be a part of that. So you look, and I see God moving in the way that he's calling artists, writers, musicians to start lifting him up. He's creating these places for that to happen. So I see him working in that way. So I'm jumping into his story, and I want to help teach Christian writers how to learn the steps to self publish their books. Because writing is a long, long process. It's not usually something that takes 5 minutes and you're done. It took me a year to write my first book. The second and third and fourth were, I got done much quicker than that. But it's a long process, and we need to come alongside each other and encourage each other, and also be encouraged. Uh, that's why I'm speaking to Christians mainly, or writers who want to write books that are meant to inspire, motivate, and encourage others. That's who I want to reach out to. If that's you, then I've created a few things that I hope that will help you both be encouraged to get out there, step out and get your books out to a world that really, I think, is getting dark and really needs um, it needs your story out there to encourage. So what I've created is if I want to, what if I want to reach out and get some freelance help? There are places right now, it has never been easier to self-publish your book, even if you don't want to do the technical work behind it. There are resources like Readsy. There are so many different resources that people can, help you with the editing process, help you create a beautiful eye-catching cover that will stand out from the others. You have to make sure what you're putting out there glorifies God. And when you do that, you want it to be the very best that you can be. But I do have a word of caution, and listen up, because this is really, really important. Um, the community I'm building, it's free. I do have a course that I'm working on, that takes you step by step the technical aspects. There'll be more on that later. But this community is free, and we can exchange ideas and support there. More on that at my site, inspirewritepublish.com. But what I really want you to be aware of, you do not have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get your book published. And there's so many people that, when I say people, it's a vendor that will take your money, and they'll tell you that they'll do everything for you and give you these promises like they're going to take your book and make it a movie. Please, please, please be careful, because there are people that prey on other people's dreams. And I'm not calling any names out, but you have to be very, very careful. Um, just be careful. There are sharks out there with any industry, anything you want to do. There are sharks out there, and just be careful. You can learn to do the steps. You can do this yourself. You can even hire freelancers for much, 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 much less than forking over thousands of dollars to have somebody do this and coming up with a lot of promises that may not actually deliver, like getting your book in all these bookstores. You have to be very, very careful, of the promises that you're being told. So anyway, those are the things that I want to talk to you about, and I hope that we can encourage each other. So if you're interested in this, if you, are a writer and you're called to write something inspiring, reach out to me at inspirewritepublish.com. Sign up for my newsletter, and you can connect with me there as well if that's more information about where to reach me on Facebook. And if you know a writer, that has a God given dream to get their work out, then send this to them too. Again, I'm Kelly Langston. Thanks so much for listening up. And stay tuned, because I've got a lot of little demos, all kinds of things that's coming your way. Subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button. And as I put out some demos where you can look over my shoulder, I'm going to get those out to you. Again, I'm just hoping that if you're a Christian author, that you connect, be inspired, and whether or not you join me or not, just get it out there, because the world really needs stories of hope and encouragement. And we need to be the light, because a little bit, one candle will dispel a lot of darkness, right? So take care, and God bless.